Hello everyone, today we're going to be going over the January 2025 Algebra 2 Regents exam. In this video, we're going to be focusing on part 3, which are 4 short response questions, each worth 4 points. A link to this test can be found in the description of this video if you want to follow along at home, alongside videos that go over part 1, 2, and 4 of this test, so please check those out. We're going to go ahead and start off with number 33, which asks us to determine the exact probability that a randomly selected guest room has a view of a lake and a queen-size bed. So if we have read this problem here, we know that the probability of getting a room that has a view of the lake is 0.24, and that's called event A. So event A is you getting a room with a view of a lake, and that probability is 0.24. Okay, then you have event B, which is the case where you get a room with a queen-size bed, and that probability is 0.74. Now, they want you to find the probability of getting both event A and B. So you getting the probability of you getting a room that has a view of a lake and a queen-size bed. When you have two events that are independent of one another, and they're asking you for the probability of that event and another event, you know you always have to multiply. So if you want to find the probability of A and B, and they're independent, that and tells you to multiply those two probabilities. So we can say that the probability of A with, or this U, you always have to write a U, that means and, the probability of B is equal to the probability of A times the probability of B. And the way that I like to remember this is probability is always a fraction, right? And if you multiply two fractions by each other, you get a fraction that's equal to an even smaller number, right? Whenever you want to find the probability of two events happening, that probability is always going to be lower because you're multiplying it. Think about you taking this test, right? Let's say that, like you had question number 1, choice A, B, C, D, and then you had question number 2, choice A, B, C, and D, right? Let's say you didn't know how to solve either one of these and you had to guess on them. The probability that you got number 1 correct is 1 out of 4, right? Because there's 4 answer choices and only one of them is correct, right? That's 25%. Now let's say that you guess properly on number 1 and then you move on to number 2, you realize, oh my god, I didn't study hard enough, I don't know the answer to this question either. So the probability of you getting choice number 2 correct as well is also 1 and 1/4, right? 1 over 4. Now, what's the probability that you get both of these right? Now, if you guess a question right, you're pretty lucky, right? That's not really common for people to guess questions correctly, so you consider yourself lucky. But for you to get 2 questions right, you're super lucky. Why? Because the probability multiplies. Because if you want to find the probability of you getting question 1 and 2 right, that's 1 over 4 times 1 over 4, which is equal to 1 over 16, right? That's equal to 0.0625. You have a 6% chance of correctly guessing 2 questions. Your probability of guessing 1 question is only 25%. So the probability of 2 events happening is even less likely than 1 event happening. That's how I like to remember it. So whenever you see and, the only way that you can find the probability of this and that is by multiplying them, because you're reducing the chance of them happening. Okay? So I don't know if that helps you guys or not, but that's how I like to remember it. Just know that and means multiply, and that's why it means multiply, right? Because the probability of 2 things happening at the same time is less than the probability of 1 thing happening. The only way that you can make a fraction smaller is by multiplying it with another fraction, because probability is always fraction. Anyways, probability of A and the probability of B, both of these events happening, is equal to 0.24 times 0.74. Plug it into your calculator. That means that the probability of A and B is equal to 0.1776, which is the correct answer, okay? That's all you have to do. And means multiply for an independent event. All right, part 2 says determine the exact probability that a randomly selected guest room has a view of the lake or a queen-sized bed. So in this case, because you see the word or, you're going to add. So and means multiply, or means add, okay? This should make sense because the probability of either A or B happening should be higher because you just want one of 2 events happening, okay? Think back to, our problem, right? You had question number 1, A, B, C, D. The probability of you guessing it correctly is 1 in 4, right? Question number 2, A, B, C, D. The probability of you guessing this one correctly is also 1 in 4, okay? So if you want to find the probability that you got question 1 or 2 correct, that means that your probability should be higher, right? Because you don't care if you got one right and then two correct. You don't care if you got one wrong and two correct, or one correct and two wrong. You just want to see whether or not you get at least one correct. Or means that, well, at least one of the events has to happen, okay? So you can either get one correct or you can get two correct, right? You're not getting one and then two correct, like I said. So because it's or, you're just going to add the probabilities, right? The probability of one happening is 1/4. The probability of a second thing happening is another 1/4. So you actually have a 50% chance, in this case, of guessing one or two correctly, right? That's the probability of one or two, okay? So the same thing has to apply for this question, right? If you want to determine the probability that a guest room has a view of a lake or a queen-sized bed, that's represented by the probability of A followed by this symbol right here, which means or, the probability of B, okay? That's how you write it out. Now that's going to equal to the probability of A plus the probability of B. But think about it this way, right? If I want the view of a lake or a queen-sized bed, right? I'm going to combine those probabilities. But I want a lake or a bed. I don't want both. So I want to add the probability of both of them happening and then subtract the probability of both of them happening at the same time, right? If I want a lake or a bed, I don't want both of them. I want one or the other, right? So I'm going to subtract the probability of A and the probability of B happening at the same time. I want a view of a lake or a bed, not both. I don't care about the overlap, so I'm actually going to take it away from that probability when I calculate it, okay? It doesn't matter. I don't care when both of them have, if you have a room with a lake and with a queen-size bed. I just want a room that has one or the other, okay? Another way to think about this is to draw the Venn diagram, right? If this is the probability of A, and this is the probability of B, this is the probability of A and B, right? But if I add the probability of A and B, I'm adding this middle part twice, so I have to subtract it, right? That's another way of thinking about this. So all I have to do here is just plug in values, right? The probability of A or the probability of B is equal to 0.24 plus 0.74, not 0.75, 0.74 minus 0.1776, so just put that in my calculator right now. 0.24 plus 0.74 minus 0.1776 is equal to 0.8024. And you could put this in a percent. You can keep it as a decimal. Doesn't really matter. As long as you didn't round your answer, you're good. Remember that whenever they want you to find the exact probability of something happening, keep it as is. Don't round it. Okay. Number 34 asks us which function has a greater average rate of change. You know that the average rate of change is f of a minus f of b divided by a minus b. Okay, so you're taking the y value at the beginning of the interval, subtracting it from the y value at the end of the interval, and dividing it by the first value of the interval minus the value of the second, or at the end of the interval, okay? So when we want to find the average rate of change from -1 to 4, -1 is going to be my A, and -4, or +4 is going to be my B. So in this case, I know that my point here, -1 is my A. That means that f of A, or m of A, the y value when you plug in A, which is -1, is going to be 1. So here I have my m of A is equal to 1. Now, what about 4? So 4 is going to be my B because that's the end of my interval. And I know that m of 4 is equal to 81. So the average rate of change for m of x is going to be 1 minus 81 divided by -1 minus 4. Or you can flip it. You can do f of b minus f of a over b minus a. It doesn't really matter. As long as you have b on top of b and a on top of a, you're good. Okay? So it's literally finding the slope between 2 points, okay? So in this case, you're finding the slope between the point -1, the point -1, comma 1, and 4, comma 81. So if you plug it into your calculator, like I'm doing right now, you're going to get that the average rate of change here is 16. So the average, so we'll just put that this is the average rate of change for m of x over the interval -1, comma 4. Okay, now we have to do the same thing, but for p of x. So for p of x, it's the same interval. So we have to find p of -1 and p of 4, and then we have to go and do p of negative 1 minus p of 4, right? Plug literally the y value at negative 1 and 4 divided by negative 1 minus 4, or the other way around, doesn't really matter. So how do you find p of negative 1? Well, you can just plug it in, right? P of negative 1 is equal to 3 to the power of negative 1 plus 1. Just replace every instance of x with whatever you have in here, which is negative 1. So 3 to the power of negative 1 plus 1 is equal to 1.3 repeating. So now you have 1.33 repeating minus p of 4. So p of 4 is going to equal to 3 to the power of 4 plus 1. 3 to the power of 4 plus 1 is equal to 82. So you have 1.33 repeating minus 82 divided by negative 1 minus 4. And this is going to equal to do that in my calculator right now. 1.33 minus 82. Negative 1 minus 4. Divide these two. You're going to get that this average rate of change turns out to be 6.13 or 16.13. So now I'll put this in a different color, right? I'll say that the average rate of change for what is this, p of x is 16.13 repeating over the interval negative 1 comma 4. So which one's bigger? Well, obviously m of x has a bigger rate of change on the interval negative 1 comma 4, and then our justification here is that not negative but positive 20 is greater than 16.13 repeating, right? That's my answer. That's all you have to do here. So just remember that formula, right? F of b minus f of a over b minus a, or f of a minus f of b over a minus b. Doesn't really matter. As long as you just found the slope between these 2 points, or you found the points, you'd get full credit here. Number 35 says determine an equation for a parabola with a focus of negative 2 comma 4 and a directrix of y is equal to 10. So I always recommend you guys to use the graph provided, or the space to graph provided. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw in a set of x and y axes just so to make it easier to graph. So let's say that this is my y, and let's put a line through here. Let's say that this is, well, actually I'll put it a little bit lower, guys. Let's say that this is that's a really bad straight line. I don't have a ruler on me, and like my drawing tablet makes it a little bit hard to draw straight lines with in this software. That's good enough. All right, so we'll say that that's x, okay? So this is my coordinate plane. And now I understand that I have a directrix at y is equal to 10. So whenever you have a line that says y equals to any number, that's going to be a flat line at that number, okay, going from left to right. Whenever you have a line that says x equals, that's going to be a vertical line going up and down. Okay, so because I have y equals, that's going to be a flat line at 10, okay? So let's just count up 10. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right here. So y is equal to 10 is going to be a flat line that passes all the way through here. And that's my directrix. Then I have my focus, right? And I'll plot this down and I'll explain what each one of these means in a bit. But our focus is negative 2 comma 4. So here's negative 2, and then 4 is 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's right here. That's my directrix, that's my focus. Now, the deal with a parabola is the following, right? A parabola has this invisible straight line called a directrix and this invisible point called a focus. And the parabola always has to pass between this directrix and this focus equidistantly, right? So if the distance between the focus and the vertex is, 4, that means that the distance between the vertex and the directrix also has to be 4, okay? So essentially these two are guidelines for this parabola to kind of follow, right? They're supposed to guide this parabola in the correct direction when you graph it, okay? So the key thing here is that the vertex, or the tip of the parabola, is going to exist between this directrix, right, and this focus, okay? And the rest of the graph has to follow suit. Okay, so we see here how this is my vertex. It's literally halfway between my directrix and my focus. Let's say it was just 2 units. That would be my vertex, okay? And remember that the graph can never cross the directrix or the focus, right? It has to go between them. It can't cross them. So I know that this graph has to open up downwards, right? So if this was our graph, it would have to open up downwards like this, because that's the only way that you don't cross the directrix or the focus. If it opened up upwards, that means that it would have to cross across the directrix, which is not allowed, okay? Now, the reason I bring this up is because when you graph or you find the equation of a parabola, it's gonna look something like this. It's gonna say that f of x is equal to 1 over 4p times x minus h plus k. So in this case, h comma k is the vertex, right? Or that tip that we were talking about, okay? Now, just by looking at this point, we know that this directrix is negative 2 comma 4. We know that the x coordinate, or my h for my vertex, is going to be negative 2, because the vertex is always above the focus and below the directrix, right? It's in between these two. So it has to be above the focus, which is situated at the point negative 2. So I know that my h is equal to negative 2. Okay, now the next thing I need to figure out is where my vertex is going to be vertically, right? So like I was saying, the vertex is equidistant from the directrix and the focus, meaning that it's the same distance from the focus up and from the directrix downwards. So the distance between the directrix and the focus is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? 6 units. So half of 6 is 3. So the vertex has to lie around here, because it's 3 units from the focus and 3 units from the directrix, okay? So that's how we balance it out. So that means that the height of my vertex has to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It has to be 7, okay? So k has to equal to 7. Now if I plug this into my formula, my f of x has to equal to 1 over 4p times x plus 2 plus 7. Okay, now what about this p here? Well, this isn't my answer. I can't leave a variable here. This p is going to be the distance between the focus and the vertex, or the vertex and the directrix, right? So this is my p-value, this is my p-value. It's the same thing, right? So my p here is going to equal to 3, because that's the distance between these two elements, okay? So 4 times 3 is 12, and right here, 12. Now, the final part to get full credit here is to determine the sign of this function, okay? Now, I should have put a plus minus here. I didn't, but, you know, technically, if you Google this formula, it won't give you a plus or minus. You'll have to assign that yourself. And the reason why is because whenever you have a minus symbol in front of your equation for the parabola, it's going to open downwards like this, right? Think about the minus as being sad or negative, so you're making like a sad face. Okay, and if there's a plus in front of it, or if it's positive, that means it's going upwards like this in a happy face, right? Think about it like that. So in this case, we can see here the only way that you can draw this line without it passing through the directrix is going to be if it's frowning and facing like this. So that has to be our line, which means that it has to be negative 1 over 12 plus x plus 2 plus 7, which is going to be the correct answer here. Okay, number 36 asks us to algebraically find the zeros of c of x. So because c of x has 4 terms, I'm not going to go ahead and try and FOIL it out, right? Even if I wanted to FOIL it out, I couldn't, because it's x to the power of 3, and FOILing only works for functions that are to the power of 2. Okay, the good thing is whenever you want to factor anything out, whether you're FOILing, you know, x squared, or you're factoring out something that has x to the power of 3, your end goal is to get a function with 4 terms. Because when you have a function with 4 terms, you can factor out one side and the other side, okay? That's the whole goal of FOILing, right? It's a split. Like if you had x squared plus 5x plus 6, right? Your goal would be to split this middle term into like 2x and 3x. That way you have x squared plus 2x plus 3x plus 6, and you have 4 terms for you to split this in half and then factor out the 2 sides. So luckily, we already have an equation with 4 sides, technically with 2 equal sides, right? Because it has 4 terms. So all we have to do here is just write it down. So if I have x cubed plus 2x squared minus 16x minus 32, I can split this in half, right? To have a left side and a right side, and I can factor both of these out independently. So what can I factor out from x cubed and 2x squared? Well, if this confuses you, just write it out. So x cubed is equal to x times x times x, and x squared is equal to 2 times x times x. So what do they have in common? Well, they have x times x in common, or x squared in common. So that's what I can take out. I can take out x squared, and I'm left with x plus 2, right? because if I take these out, I'm left with x and 2, or x plus 2. Over here, what can I factor out from negative 16 times x and negative 16 times 2 times x? Well, I can factor out negative 16x, and I'm left with just 1x and 2, right? So if I factor out negative 16, I'm left with x plus 2, okay? Sorry, I wrote this incorrectly, guys. What do negative 16 times x and negative 16 times 2 have in common? They have negative 16 in common, which is why I'm left with x plus 2, okay? Now that I have two parentheses that have the same value inside of them, I can combine them into one parentheses, like so, and I can combine these two into another parentheses like this. Is this my fully factored out version? No, because I have a difference of perfect squares here, okay? What that means is x squared minus 16 squared can be rewritten as x plus 4 times x minus 4. It's very important for you guys to memorize this, right? Whenever you have a squared minus b squared, or two perfect squares, that's equal to a plus b times a minus b. This is something that's always going to follow you. If you're planning on taking like pre-calculus or even calc, like you'll still be dealing with that form, so it's good to memorize now. Or if you're not planning on taking any math courses after this test, just memorize it for the test and then move on with your life. Right, so we can factor this out into x plus 4 times x minus 4 times x plus 2, right? And whenever you factor out something or you're finding the zeros, you always set it equal to 0 at the end, okay? So essentially, if any one of these terms is equal to 0, or any one of these parentheses is equal to 0, the whole thing gets turned into 0. So all you have to do is set each one of your parentheses equal to 0. So x plus 4 equals 0, x minus 4 equals 0, and then finally x plus 2 is equal to 0. So the zeros are x is equal to negative 4, x equals positive 4, and x equals negative 2. So these are all of our zeros. And finally, they want us to sketch this graph. So when they ask you to sketch something, they're only looking if you know two things. Number one, the zeros, and number two, the end behavior. So all you have to do is just show that you know that the zeros are negative 4, 4, and negative 2, and that you know that when you have a 0, that's when the graph crosses the x-axis. So don't worry about assigning a scale other than for your zeros. So if your first 0 is 4, then draw 1, 2, 3, 4. Just write a 4 here and plot a point, because the 0 is always going to be on the x-axis at that point. Then draw another hash mark right here. This is negative 2, so this is another 0. This is negative 3, and this is negative 4, which is another 0 here. So you now have one out of the two things that they want here. You have the zeros plotted, and now you need to just show the end behavior of the graph. So instead of memorizing this stuff, literally just graph it. You have a graphing calculator, use it. So, sorry, this is from a different part of this test, which is a video you guys should check out. It's in the description. Over here, we'll just graph x to the power of 3 plus 2x squared minus 16x minus 32. And if you hit graph here, you can see here how the graph is going downwards. Then it passes through the point negative 4, goes up, goes back down around negative 2, goes down until it reaches 4, and then goes back up. So we just have to copy this shape here. Up, down, up, okay? So here, doesn't matter how far you go or how narrow you are, just as long as you're showing that you're going up, back down, and then back up like so, and you just draw two arrows over here and over here, and then you get the full credit. Okay, the only thing they care about is, again, the things I mentioned. So label your zeros. This is negative 2, this is negative 4, and then make sure that you have the correct behavior of the graph, okay? Nothing else matters. Don't worry about the y-axis. And that's the end of this part, right? So there's another video going over part 4. I'm going to link it in the description if you want to keep going over this. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know in the comments. Hope you guys learned something, and I hope you have a nice day.